So now I am going to discuss about the second part that is given in your syllabus about ecosystem, that is your functional aspects of ecosystem. Now there are various functional aspects of ecosystem, but majorly these four functions plays an important role to maintain an ecosystem. One is your productivity, second is your decomposition, third is energy flow, and fourth is nutrient cycling or the cycling of various nutrients, also called as biogeochemical cycles. So let's begin. So about productivity, what does productivity means? In simple words, it means that amount of organic matter which is getting accumulated within the body of the organism at any unit time is called its productivity. So productivity simply means amount of organic matter or the biomass that we are talking about that are getting accumulated in any unit time. Okay, now this productivity can be measured in terms of weight, and it can also be measured in terms of energy also. In terms of weight, if you want to measure the productivity in terms of weight, then the unit will be gram per meter square per year. If you want to define productivity in terms of measured energy, then as we know, the unit of energy is kilocalorie or joule. So it can be written in the form of kilocalorie per meter square per year. So it simply means that how much energy, at what rate the energy is getting synthesized within that organic matter or biomass by any trophic level organisms per unit area. That's why we are using meter square as a unit of area in unit time. So in a definite amount of time, in a definite in a particular unit area, how much energy, or better to say how much organic matter which contain that energy synthesized by that particular trophic level organisms. So now let us see the types of productivity. Productivity are of two types, as I have mentioned in the first video. Little bit I have discussed you about the primary productivity and secondary productivity. Primary productivity is based on the producers, the autotrophs, that is the plants, the chemoautotrophs, certain bacteria, protozoa involved in this primary productivity. And secondary productivity are those consumers which are consuming the primary producers, and by using their energy they are making their own biomass, okay, their own tissues, cells in their body. That is your secondary productivity. So all the secondary productivity refers to the consumers, the herbivores, the carnivores, etc., whereas the primary productivity is based on the producers, all the plants species, and also some chemoautotrophs like bacteria and fungi. Now this primary productivity, as you can see, it is further can be categorized into two types. One is called gross primary productivity, and the other one is the net primary productivity. So what does gross and net primary productivity means? Let us see. Okay, so I have again tried to define this primary productivity: the amount of energy accumulated by the green plants, the amount of energy accumulated by the green plants in the form of kilocalorie, as biomass of organic or organic matter per unit area over a certain period of time through a process of photosynthesis is known as the primary productivity. Although the chemoautotrophs are involved in primary productivity, but they are negligible, you can say. To maintain an ecosystem, they are almost negligible. So, in case of primary productivity, what is the definition? It can be defined as the rate at which the amount of energy getting accumulated by the green plants in the form of biomass, in the form of organic matter per unit area over a certain period of time through the process of photosynthesis is called primary productivity. And primary productivity, just in the previous page I have shown you that it is of two types. One is your gross primary productivity and other one is net primary productivity. So what does gross and net primary productivity means? Let us try to define them. Gross primary productivity means the total rate of photosynthesis including the organic matter used up in respiration during measurement period is called gross primary productivity. So gross primary productivity means what? The total rate of photosynthesis including the organic matter used up in the respiration during measurement period. So it simply means what amount of biomass, the energy that contained within the biomass is being produced during photosynthesis, and at the same time what amount of energy that was contained in the biomass of that particular trophic level are used up for respiration, for other purposes, altogether is called gross primary productivity. So I've tried to define this gross primary productivity in a simple way. The total organic matter added in the body of producers plus the loss, plus the biomass that was lost, that was suffered by them due to the other body activities, due to respiration and also other tissue damage activities like grazing of the other higher trophic levels, is called gross primary productivity. So the total biomass or the total organic matter which is being produced by the producers during photosynthesis plus the amount of biomass which, or the energy that was contained in the biomass which was lost as a result of um, as a result of respiration and other body activities like damages that caused by the grazing animals, all together called as gross primary productivity. So gross primary productivity mainly depends on your chlorophyll content, how much amount of chlorophyll is present by the green plants, because more amount of chlorophyll means there is a more chance of production of energy in the form of biomass by the green plants, and estimated in terms of either chlorophyll content in the form of this unit chlorophyll per gram dry weight per unit area, or it can be expressed by the photosynthetic number, that is how much amount of carbon dioxide is fixed during the photosynthesis process by the chlorophyll per hour. So gross primary productivity simply means all the total biomass, all the energy that was prepared during photosynthesis plus what was the energy used up in the biomass used up for respiration and for other body activities or due to other damages. Okay. Let us now discuss. So wait for a minute. So it is saying also that I have just go through this that line that cross primary productivity depends on chlorophyll content. Chlorophyll plays an important factor for gross primary productivity as well as net primary productivity, and estimated in terms of either chlorophyll content, and you can express this gross primary productivity with relation with the chlorophyll content as uh, chlorophyll per gram dry weight per unit area. What amount of chlorophyll content is there in the producers, so that more and more energy can be produced by them. Or you can also express the gross primary productivity in terms of photosynthetic number, like how much amount of carbon dioxide is fixed up for the photosynthesis process per gram of by the chlorophyll per hour. Okay. Next is the net primary productivity. Net primary productivity is referring to only the weight of the organic matter stored by the producers. Just the weight of the organic matter which is stored by the producers. That means, in simple words, net primary productivity means what is the rate of organic matter created by the producers during photosynthesis minus how much rate of organic matter used up during respiration and other losses. So we have to subtract from the loss, and what is the final uh, amount of organic matter remained in that particular organism is your net primary productivity. Okay, now let's move to the next page. Now there are various methods through which your primary productivity can be measured, or the primary production can be measured. Okay, so there are various ways through which your primary production can be measured, and those process are your harvest method, oxygen measurement method. Oxygen measurement method is also called as light or dark method, oxygen diurnal curve method, carbon dioxide measurement method, pH method, chlorophyll estimation method, and many more methods are there which can be used up for estimating the primary production caused by that particular plant species. Okay, so here I have shown you a little bit of example to show the difference between the gross primary productivity and the net primary productivity. Suppose glucose is produced by the plants during photosynthesis. What amount it is producing, we have not used that amount. So that is your gross primary production. How much glucose is produced by the plants during photosynthesis, plus what amount of glucose or energy is used up during respiration and other activities. Now look at the right side. Remaining glucose available to the laid down as new material or biomass. So by subtracting that how much amount of glucose is used up, the leftover part will be called as net primary production. So in this way you can able to get differentiate between the gross and the net primary production or productivity. But what about the secondary productivity? Secondary productivity is actually related with the consumers. The consumers like herbivores are consuming the primary producers, okay, where primary production has already been done, and that energy which was stored in the primary producers are now assimilated by the uh, consumers, and they are using that energy to build their own biomass. That is your secondary productivity comes into play. So secondary productivity means it is the rate of energy storage at consumers level. Okay, like your herbivores, carnivores, omnivores, decomposers, all are the part of secondary productivity. Okay, and this secondary productivity depends on the loss while transferring energy containing organic matter from previous trophic level plus the consumption due to respiration. This you should remember, that this secondary productivity depends on the loss while transferring the energy, because when they will try to consume that previous trophic level, they have to oxidize that matter, oxidize that energy to get incorporated within their body, and during that time what happen, there will be loss of energy. So 100% we cannot get that energy from the previous trophic level, the energy which was stored within their within their body, within that matter. So from one tropic level to the previous, from the previous tropic level, there will be a loss of energy while transferring, while consuming, plus there will be loss of energy due to respiration activity, okay, and other body activities. So the net primary productivity, as we have seen in primary productivity, the net secondary productivity, better to say, the net secondary productivity will ultimately will decrease as it pass from one trophic level to the next trophic level, because ultimately when they are consuming, when the higher trophic level organisms are consuming the lower trophic level organisms, most part of the energy is lost as heat, okay, while only 10% of the energy is available for them to utilize them to make their own biomass. Okay, now it is saying that consumers tends to utilize the already produced food materials in their respiration, and also convert that food matter to different cells and tissues by an overall process. That is your secondary productivity. They are using the energy. Suppose we are also doing the secondary production or secondary productivity, because we are utilizing the plant biomass energy which was stored in within the biomass of the plant, consuming them, oxidize them, some amount of energy is getting lost also to the environment, and at the same time loss of activity occurs during respiration also, and finally that particular amount of biomass is that contain that energy from the plant is stored within our body, in our own body type. Like we what we do, we are consuming the glucose gets oxidized through the process of various steps like glycolysis, Krebs cycle, electron transport chain to make more and more ATP. Excess glucose is stored in the form of glycogen, and that is why, that is how this is our the secondary productivity. Okay, we also make some fatty tissues, okay, which stores the energy, adipose tissues, right? So in this way secondary productivity occurs. I've just said through human beings little bit of example that how secondary productivity is occurring. Now secondary productivity is not stable because we are always moving. A simple thing, secondary productivity remains mobile. That means it keeps on moving from one organism to the next organism, and it does not live in situ. That means it does, the secondary production does not occur within that site as compared to the primary productivity, because primary productivity occurs in the green plants, and green plants remain fixed in one site, okay, and they are not mobile. They are also mobile when they are eaten up by the herbivores or by the other higher trophic level organisms. Otherwise they are stable. But secondary productivity is not stable, they remains mobile, we keep on moving. Look at the other consumers, we all keep on moving, and thus the net primary production is also getting moved throughout the period of, as a result of food chain, okay. And as I have said that during the energy transfer from one trophic level to the other trophic level between the consumers, there will be loss of energy as a result of oxidation of that matter during assimilation of that energy into our tissues, and and due to our other bodily activities like respiration, and more and more things. So overall the remaining energy stored in our body will be quite low. Okay, so this was about the primary productivity. Let us move to the next function aspects, that is your decomposition. Now decomposition is a good term. uh, Decomposition simply means to break down physically or chemically, breakdown of the complex organic matter or the complex organic matter that remains in the environment with the help of decomposers. When living things die, you have seen that uh, if plants die, suppose you see that mites, ticks, and certain insects are degrading that plant material. Okay, at the same time, if an animal dies, we'll see an awful smell also, and it occurs due to the presence of decomposers. The decomposers are trying to degrade the organic matter present in that body, the remaining biomass present in the body. Yes, dead organism also contain that organic matter remaining, and the decomposers try to degrade that organic matter, and due to the release of their waste product we feel that awful smell. So it is an important process, otherwise our nutrients will not be recycled to the ecosystem, and further the green plants cannot able to utilize that nutrients if decomposers are not present. So decomposition is the physical and chemical breakdown of complex organic remains. The complex organic remains are the dead animals and plants with the help of decomposers. So decomposers physically and chemically break down those complex organic matter of those dead plants and animals, and they are using that energy, at the same time they are recycling the nutrients back to the environment again, so that the producers can use that energy. In terrestrial ecosystem, upper layer of soil is the main site of decomposition. So decomposition occurs on the upper layer of soil, that is the topsoil. The organic remains, that is the dead plants, parts, animal remains, and their excretions are called detritus. So the organic matter that we are talking about, it it will be the dead plants and animals remains, and also the excretory products of those animals are called as detritus. So in one word, detritus means that waste organic matter or the dead plants and animal remains. Okay, and detritus is the raw material for decomposition. Detritus is the main raw material for decomposition. So decomposers depend on this detritus of these dead plant and animal remains and their excretions to break down them into simple substances so that they can utilize them for their own body uses. Now there are some energy contained in the detritus. Some amount of energy is contained within the detritus. By the time the organism has died, or our waste product, it contains some amount of energy remaining. That energy is not lost to the ecosystem as a whole, rather that detritus or that organic matter remains will can serve as a source of energy for the group of organisms called detrivores. So detrivores use that detritus, which are the organic remains of dead plants and animals, also the waste products. There little bit of amount of energy is available, which can be utilized by the detrivores or by the decomposers to degrade that matter. Now here from this point, I am little bit discuss about the detritus food chain also, because it is related with that. Okay, so this decomposition as done by decomposers by the process of a food chain called detritus food chain. It is very important component of energy flow in an ecosystem. I have talked to you about the energy flow in an ecosystem in the previous video, the previous ecosystem lecture. Just go through it. So in order to maintain that cycle of energy, in order to maintain that cycle of nutrients within the ecosystem, detritus food chain is very important, right? Now in detritus food chain, the energy flow remains as a continuous passage rather than as a stepwise flow between discrete entities. So little bit difference is there between the detritus food chain and with the other food chain, because in detritus food chain the energy flow remains as a continuous passage, because most of the organism eat on common detritus. There is no such stepwise trophic level. Okay, there is no such stepwise trophic level that we can find in detritus food chain. Like in case of grazing food chain, if you see, a normal grass is eaten by certain rabbit, rabbit is eaten by certain snake, snake is eaten by certain eagle. So this is in a stepwise fashion. But in detritus food chain, the energy flow remains as a continuous passage. So a continuous passage occurs. Suppose a dead organism is remaining in the soil, in the land, then all the detrivores, the mites, the ticks, right, actinomyces, bacteria, algae, molds, fungi, protozoa, centipedes, nematodes. Okay, nematodes are earthworms and some rotifers, and some vertebrates also get involved together to degrade that organic matter present in the land, and they utilize them. So it's not like stepwise fashion that one will eat and then that animal, that particular organism will be eaten by some other trophic level organisms. Not like that. Continuously the detritus is getting utilized by the detrivores together, and it is not like the other food chain that we have seen, like your grazing food chain. Okay, so in detritus food chain, the energy flow remains as a continuous passage rather than as a stepwise flow between discrete entities. It just means like that. I have tried to discuss with you this part. Now what are the organisms in detritus food chain? It's mainly your algae, slime molds, actinomycetes, fungi, protozoa, insects, mites, crustacea, centipedes, millipedes, then mollusks, rotifers, nematodes, annelid worms, and some vertebrates are also involved. Are actually they are forming the decomposers or detrivores, you can say. Now if you see, most of these organisms are not specific. Okay, they are not specific actually. Some of the organisms are specific, okay, but otherwise most of the organisms are non-specific. They can eat on any detrivores. That's why the continuous flow of energy occurs. Okay, so let us see. It is saying that some species are highly specific in their food habits, if we talk about detritus food chain, and most of them can eat almost anything. Like for example, there is a group of tiny soil insects called Collembola, Collembola. Collembola are the group of tiny soil insects that can eat almost anything. They can eat almost any decaying matter, like decaying plant material, fungal fragments. It can eat spores of the fungus, fly pupa, other collembola, other dead columbola, not live columbola because they're detrivores, parts of decaying earthworms, etc. So in this way, most of the detrivores can eat almost anything. So a continuous um, energy flow remains rather than as a stepwise flow that occurs in the grazing food chain or in the aquatic food chain. Now there are certain protozoa which are little bit specific because they need specific organic acids, vitamins and other nutrients before they thrive. So certain protozoa are specific to certain decaying organisms. Otherwise most of the detrivores are commonly they are using almost any type of dead matter. Okay, so let us move to the next page. Now I have tried to compare between the grazing food chain with the detritus food chain. Now it is saying that I will discuss about the grazing food chain when I will talk you to about the next functional aspect, that is your energy flow. Now compared to the grazing food chain, in which the energy storage is entirely within the tissues of living organism, in case of detritus food chain, energy storage for the detritus food chain may be largely external to the organisms, tend to and in the detritus itself. What does it mean? If you see the grazing food chain, which is the almostly common food chain that we see in every ecosystem, what happens in the grazing food chain, the all energy is stored, or not all energy, most of the energy is lost, as a 10% rule that I have said, proposed by Linderman. It is saying that the amount of energy stored within the tissues of the living organism in grazing food chain. But in case of detritus food chain, little amount of energy is utilized by the detrivores for their survival, and most part of the energy and also the nutrients are externally supplied. So they are recharging the soil, they are recharging the biosphere with the nutrients by just converting that organic matter, breaking out organic matter, because they have some essential enzymes to break them out and convert them into inorganic matter, so that that inorganic matter can be easily utilized again by the autotrophs like plants and chemoautotrophs like certain bacteria and protozoa, to use them as a source of energy again. So this is the little bit difference between the grazing food chain and the detritus food chain. So I have tried to show you a flow chart which shows that how grazing food chains and detritus food chains are related with one another. So you can see the grazing food chain, they are, I have not shown the all the food chains that how they are eaten up by one trophic level with the next trophic level, but I have just shown that here grazing food chain is occurring and their excretory products is getting released to the environment. At the same time the organisms are dying. Okay, then comes the decomposers, which are using that dead and excretory materials from the grazing food chain to use them and utilize them for their own growth. Now most part of the nutrients are getting lost, most part of the materials are getting lost due to percolation of that organic matter. Sometimes what happens, the organic matter is getting degraded by the detrivores in such a way that they become soluble in water and they percolate deep into the ground, deep into the soil rocks, where they cannot be utilized by the detrivores again. But most part of the organic materials permanently incorporated into the sediments. Sediments um, are the small, what can I say, rock pieces which are flow down by the rivers, which get accumulated in the river floor or sea floor or ocean floor, where this can be done. Then you can see that soil animals consumes the other living soil organisms. So some big soil organisms which are not fall in the category of detrivores, they are consuming the detrivores, and these soil organisms consumed by the carnivores in the grazing food chain again. So in this way you can see that how the grazing food chain and the detritus food chains are related to one another. So we were actually talking about decomposition, and related with this decomposition there is this detritus food chain I have discussed with you. Now let us see the types of decomposition that may occur in the ecosystem. So decomposition can be of about 5 types. One is your fragmentation, leaching, catabolism, humification, which is the formation of humus, and mineralization. So what is fragmentation? As the name suggests, it is the physically breakdown of the organic remain or the organic matter into small pieces. So fragmentation simply means it is the breakdown of the organic matter into smaller pieces. So some detrivores like earthworms, millipedes, centipedes can able to break down this organic matter into smaller pieces or particles. That is fragmentation, and fragmentation occurs due to the presence of specific enzymes found within the detrivores. The second way through which the decomposition can be done is your leaching. Let us discuss about leaching. Leaching means to percolate. I think you can able to see it little bit hazy has come in the first line. So it is saying that in leaching process the inorganic nutrients in the detritus are soluble in water that goes down deep into the soil horizon, and thus it becomes unavailable to the plant. So what happened, as I have said when I was talking about the flow chart of the grazing food chain and the detritus food chain, I have shown you a line that loss of matter occurs. So why loss of matter occurs? As the detritus, as the detrivores or you can say decomposers are degrading that dead organic matter or waste products, they convert into inorganic nutrients. Okay, and so most of the some of the inorganic nutrients are soluble in water. So rainfall is occurring, and what happened, that rainfall occurring or it mixed with the streams of the rivers, ponds. So what happened, that or that inorganic matter which are soluble in water, it goes down deep into the soil where further it cannot be utilized again by the plants. That is called leaching process. Okay, so it percolates down into the soil horizon, into the rock layer, and thus that particular amount of inorganic material is unavailable to the plants. That is called leaching. So this is the second way through which decomposition is done. The third way that decomposition is carried out is catabolism. It is actually it is in respect to the cellular level, because catabolism means some enzymes which can degrade the detritus into simple inorganic substances. So if you compare with fragmentation and catabolism, fragmentation is breakdown into small pieces, whereas in catabolism here the enzymes are employed, special enzymes are employed which will degrade that complex organic matter of the detritus into simple inorganic substance by catabolism process. Catabolism simply means breakdown of complex organic substance into simple forms, as we do normally in our body when we eat some complex substance like hemicellulose or cellulose. We break them into simple, or starch, we break them into simple substances. The next is humification. Humification is actually the accumulation of humus. Now, humus is very it is a mixture which contain high amount of lignin and chitin. Okay, so it is actually contain a high rate of organic matter, which is very good for the plants to grow in the croplands. But this humification, or this the formation of humus, which is a dark colored amorphous substance, they are highly resistant to microbial action. So most of the detrivores are the microbes, they degrade that organic matter, and humus mostly contain that dead animal remains. Okay, but it is highly resistant to microbial action because humus consists of basically the presence of lignin and chitin. And if you see the structure of lignin and chitin, they are very complicated structure, and so breaking down of lignin by the microbes with the help of enzymes will take quite a long time. It will break, but it will take quite a long time to break away this lignin and chitin like organic matter. So in humification process, the rate of decomposition of organic matter is very slow. Why? Why decomposition rate is very slow? Because due to the presence of lignin and chitin. Lignin is a complicated structure that make breaking down of lignin very difficult. Lignin has several strong linkages or bonds, you can say, atoms connected with one another with the help of bonds. Okay, and they are very difficult to break them down. Now most of the case where we will find lignin is normally found as structural materials which support the tissues of vascular plants having xylem and phloem tissues. Okay, and some algae. So when those plants die and decay and form humus, they contain the lignin as the main source of humus. Chitin also, it is a complex substance which is fibrous in structure, and it mainly composed of polysaccharide. Chitin is a type of polysaccharide which is the major constituent of the exoskeleton of the arthropods like cockroaches, like certain insects are there where chitin contains their main part in the form of exoskeleton. So humification can be degraded by the soil microbes, but very slowly, and when the humus is completely degraded down, they can degrade in the form of minerals, and that what we can get mineralization. So when the humus is degraded completely by the microbes for a long period of time, then it will result in the release of nutrients and minerals. Okay, so let us now move to the next page.